How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Hot Takes with Holmes podcast edition. I believe it's the third or fourth installment of what I've been doing over the winter break, and I'd like to take the opportunity to wish everybody a happy new year. Welcome to 2019, of course, 2018 in the past. Looking forward to another great year, and of course, this will be the first episode of Hot Takes with Holmes in 2019. I did that on purpose. The show typically goes on a Monday, so it would have been yesterday, New Year's Eve. I wanted to kind of wait until the new year and start off in 2019 with a bang. So the first episode in 2019, of course, whenever we'll be going live on Radio Free Radford, when we go back for classes, I will get that out on our Facebook page. So if you like what you hear on the show, be sure to like that Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Both of them are Hot Takes with Holmes. That's where all of our past broadcasts and current broadcasts go up to, and that's where all of the updates and little tidbits of what's going on around the show goes on live in our social media pages, the Facebook and YouTube channel. But of course, as always, my name is Blake Holmes. Stick around with me, as today I'm going to be talking about the recent action around the NFL, NCAA, and National Basketball Association Worlds. Starting it off with college basketball, like we have for the major part of the season. Starting college basketball off like we always do with the Radford Highlander review. The Radford men's team, they actually had a week. They've had a week of two different games. Of course, they knocked off Georgia Southern 80-68. They are actually playing as we speak. It is 3:19 p.m. here on January 1st, 2019, and they are playing Mars Hill at home right now. Of course, that's going to be something that by the time this episode goes up, that game will be over. So Maryland was a team that they played on Saturday. Maryland, a tough ACC opponent, especially for a small school like Radford, but they've been up to the task with some bigger name schools so far this year. They actually hung with Maryland a lot longer than anybody thought they would. They had two starters in over 20 points, and Travis Fields Jr. and Carlik Jones, as they were beaten by the Terrapins 78-64 in Maryland. Of course, like I said, it's no easy task. It's no easy feat for the Highlanders to go in and beat the Terrapins on a strong ACC team, not ACC, Big Ten team on their home floor. So Maryland, they took the win, and again, Radford playing Mars Hill as we speak. Moving on to the rankings. Of course, yesterday the AP poll for the men's college basketball rankings came out in week 9. So for the AP poll, just a top 5 review, at number 1 we have the Duke Blue Devils. Not much can be said about them that hasn't already been said. They're incredible freshmen: Zion Williamson, Cam Reddish, R.J. Barrett, Trey Jones. The list goes on. They're a fantastic basketball team. Only lost one game so far this season at 11-1. Number 2 is Michigan at 13-0, an impressive streak so far. Again, haven't lost a game. Michigan has been a sneaky good team in the Big Ten in regular season for quite a few years now. And last year, they obviously made the national championship, losing to Villanova. Is it possible they may kind of do a UNC run and go back to the championship? Who knows? But they sit at 13-0 and second in the nation. At number 3, we have the Tennessee Volunteers at 11-1. Of course, the only team they've lost to is the then number 1 team, the Kansas Jayhawks. Tennessee has received 12 first-place votes, and Admiral Schofield, Grant Williams has probably been the best player in the SEC so far, or at least one of the best players. They're a very athletic team, and Tennessee, one of the higher rankings they've had in their school history, at the number 3 seed in the nation. Number 4 is the UVA Cavaliers. Tony Bennett, as good as they come for a college basketball coach. The defensive mindset that Virginia always has going into the season. They are 11-0 right now and looking to try to dethrone Duke in the ACC. Number 5 is Kansas. Of course, Kansas, they lost their first game 2 weeks ago to the Arizona State Sun Devils on the road. They are 11-1, and Kansas has beaten some very capable teams so far in that run. You talk about Azubuike. You talk about some of the great playmakers that they have, LeGerald Vick, and I mean, they are a very capable basketball team at 11-1. But look out for Nevada at 13-0 right behind them. Moving on to the National Football League. So that's it. The regular season has officially come to a close. We had some interesting situations happen in Week 17. And obviously the playoff field was set. We'll just review the playoff real quick. The playoffs, as I said, exciting week 17, but this is how the season ended. In the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs clinched the number 1 spot as they were able to beat the Oakland Raiders in a drumming yesterday, finishing 12-4. Number 2 is the New England Patriots at 11-5. New England has looked, honestly, to me, less than impressive not nearly as impressive as they normally do this year, but of course that still equals 11-5 and the second seed in the AFC. So I guess that's what we can just expect from New England. We expect greatness from this point. Number 3 is the Houston Texans at 11-5. Houston almost losing that number 3 spot in some late season stumbles, but still they were able to clinch up there. They get a home game in the wild card round, and they will face whoever is the 6th seed, which we'll get to in a minute. Baltimore takes the number 4 spot in the playoff. In Week 16, the Steelers were beaten by the New Orleans Saints, so the Ravens did jump up into the number 4 spot then. And of course, last week there were some due to the late game heroics of the Baltimore Ravens defense, they were able to hang on and get that number 4 spot. Number 5 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They will travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. 12-4 were the Chargers. Of course, Ravens beat the Chargers on the road earlier this year. Now it's the Chargers to go on the road to Baltimore. And number 6 is the Indianapolis Colts beating the Tennessee Titans in a win-or-go-home game in Week 17. Of course, Indianapolis will travel to Houston in an AFC South matchup. Right on the outside looking in, finished as the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Tennessee Titans, and the Cleveland Browns finished 7-8-1. Then really, I believe the stat is correct. They haven't had a winning season since I believe it's 2007. So they'll look to do that next year. But this is leaps and bounds with this Cleveland Browns team. Of course, when you talk about the Browns, you'd think last year, what a jump. You could say, 7-8-1, that's not that impressive. Well, they went 0-16 last year. To go from 0-16 to 7-8-1, that's a phenomenal improvement, and it's something to build on that you can look forward to in the offseason and getting ready for next year. In the NFC, New Orleans finishes on top of the conference at 13-3, but we already knew that. We knew they were going to clinch the number 1 spot after they did defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 2 is the Los Angeles Rams, also at 13-3. But of course, Saints held the tiebreaker on the Los Angeles Rams because they defeated the Rams earlier this season. So the Rams will have the number 2 spot in the NFC. Number 3 is the Chicago Bears. Had a chance to take the 2 from the Rams if they were to lose this past week, but of course they didn't do that. The Bears did win, and they finished 12-4, have the 3 spot in the NFC, which is also an impressive jump for them. They went from last in the NFC North to first, so they will host a playoff game. Number 4 is the Dallas Cowboys at 10-6. They were in a tight division race for a little bit towards the end of the season, kind of made some fans sweat, but they were able to close it out, and they get the number 4 seed in the playoffs. Number 5 is the Seattle Seahawks at 10-6. Another team that I was kind of surprised to be as good as they are. I didn't, with that battered defense, I didn't really expect the Seahawks to be anything spectacular by any means. But here they are at 10-6 in the 5 spot in the playoffs. So of course, when you play in a conference or you play in a division with the Rams at 13-3. The 5 is the best you're going to get, and the Seahawks are happy to have that. And number 6 is the Philadelphia Eagles at 9-7. Philadelphia, Nick Foles will most likely play in the playoff game this upcoming. So the Eagles will take on the Cowboys. Or excuse me, no, I said that wrong. The Eagles will take on the Bears on the road, and the Seahawks will travel to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Nick Foles gets back into the playoffs again. Last year, we know what happened. He went and led the Eagles through the playoffs into the Super Bowl, and he knocked off Tom Brady. Of course, give Nick Foles a chance in the playoffs. He might have a shot. So the Eagles, don't count them out just yet. There have been 6 seeds that have went all the way before. Right on the outside looking in was Minnesota at 8-7-1 after they were beat by the Bears, which basically knocked them out of playoff contention since the Eagles won. And the Atlanta Falcons were right behind them at 7-9. Another great team that kind of came alive in the at the end of the season. They started off, I believe it was 1-5, and here they are at 7-9, finishing it out. Kind of an underachieving season, but you kind of you take that last part and you think, well, we made a run, we made a push. That's something to build off of. Another team that's kind of upset, another two teams that are kind of frustrated with how they finished are the Washington Redskins and the Carolina Panthers. Washington, when you lose a quarterback like Alex Smith to the type of injury they did, there's not much you can do with that. And then for the Carolina Panthers, after starting off 6-2, they stumbled, lost 7 straight games, and finished at 7-9. So, you have to build off of something. So you take your early season success and you say, well, how can we fix this? We know that Cam Newton had a shoulder problem towards the end of the year. Maybe that's the issue, and they will correct that throughout the offseason. But of course, a tough finish to the season for both Washington and Carolina. So before I go into my wild card weekend predictions, I want to do a little bit of a game here. I wanted to be able to say I'm going to name a team that didn't make the playoffs, like a team that's out of the playoffs that either could have or should have or whatever, and I'm going to say how I think their season went most wrong. So whether it be well, you know what, we'll just jump right in. So starting off, I want to say the Cleveland Browns. Where I think their season went wrong was bringing Hugh Jackson back for a third season. It is I don't understand that. I didn't understand that from the beginning. The guy was 3-36, I believe was the record, and won in 3 years as the Browns coach. How do you let a guy come back and do that when he just went 1-15 and 0-16? Because of that, the Browns were at a disadvantage. You notice whenever he got fired, Greg Williams, as the defensive coordinator, stepped in and led the Browns to I believe it was either a 5-2 and 5-3 record as the Browns head coach, interim head coach. And if you are Cleveland, you have to take that in consideration when you're looking for your next job. You're looking for your next head coach. I mean, Greg, he knew the type of odds that were against him. He knew the type of roster and the type of problems that Hugh Jackson had. And he made it look like an entirely different football team. So that's where their season went wrong. Browns, again, a heck of a season compared to what they had last year. They are a very talented and dangerous football team at times. But bringing Hugh Jackson back was their downfall. Next team up is the Tennessee Titans at 9-7. Where their season went too wrong, too much inconsistency. That is a major flaw in the Titans. I make the joke every single year, or I've made the joke in the 2 years I've done this show, of in the NFL there's always one team that I can pick to win and they will lose, or in the same team the very next week I will pick them to lose and they will win. I can't win with that team. That's how I feel about the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee was so inconsistent. One day we're talking about how they're Super Bowl contenders and they are just a fantastic football team. The rest of the AFC and the NFL should be on watch. The next day they look very mediocre and not that great. And so Tennessee finishing at 9-7. Of course, Mariota suffered an injury later on in the year, and Tennessee's still decently young. But the thing is, like I said, fix the inconsistency. You got to get in the playoffs. You got to win those big games at the end of the year to get into the playoffs. And rounding out the AFC, as much as it hurts me to say, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, for those that know me, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But you ask me, no, they do not deserve to make the playoffs this year. I don't believe that. I mean, they are one of the most talented teams in the AFC, and you look at that division. Let's take a look at the AFC North. You have the Cleveland Browns, as I mentioned, that have just fired their head coach, that are on the upcoming rise. Then you look at the Ravens, who have been thinking about trying to get Lamar Jackson in the quarterback position all year long. They finally do it, and they go on a tear. Cincinnati, Andy Dalton goes down. It was Jeff Driscoll in charge of the quarterbacking duties. He seemed to struggle throughout his time, but again, what can you expect from a backup? Talent-wise, at least based on what I've seen so far, the Steelers have better talent than all three of those rosters. The problem where their season went downhill is a little bit of a mixture between the Tennessee Titans and when I said inconsistency. But I don't know if it's necessarily inconsistency. I want to say it's coaching decisions. As much as I am a fan of Mike Tomlin, I really am. I think that he has done a phenomenal job in his time in Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't believe he's ever had a losing season. And so, as much as I like what he does, you can't go you have to take some responsibility for some of the coaching decisions that you make, or some issues that come up, and that's not something that he's been doing. The players run the team, not so much the coach. It's at least that's how it seems at times with this team. And it was an underachieving season, finishing 9-6-1. Just to name some games: the Chargers game, they gave up a big second half comeback to the Los Angeles Chargers. The New Orleans Saints game, the Saints came back and won in the fourth quarter. Lost to the Raiders on the road, and that's another problem with them too, is overlooking bad teams. In the National Football League, you cannot overlook an opponent and expect to win. It's not possible. I don't care who you're playing. You can't just say, "Oh, we play the X team this week. We're fine." You can't be doing that in the NFL. Any given Sunday, any team can beat any team. And that's a problem that the Steelers had this year, losing too many games that they had no business losing. In the NFC, I'm going to go ahead and say the Carolina Panthers again, where their season went wrong when Cam Newton, when it came out that he had a shoulder injury. Of course, we know who the emotional leader of that team is. It is Cam Newton. He has been ever since he got into Charlotte. Christian McCaffrey is growing up right in front of our eyes. He really is becoming a perennial Pro Bowl, in my opinion. Just I want to say at this point probably a top 5 running back in the league right now. And he's a utility guy. He can do whatever he an offense needs him to do. They still have great playmakers in their defense. Just to name a few: Dante Jackson. You have Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis. There's still plenty of playmakers. They're old. They're older playmakers, except for the exception of Jackson, and Luke's not that old. But it's an older defense. But they have the capability to still be good. And so when Cam went down with a shoulder injury, some coaching decisions came with it, and that was their downfall, in my opinion. At number 9 was the Washington Redskins, and their downfall is obvious. Alex Smith, the gruesome leg injury. Of course, we wish him nothing but the best and hope that he finds a way to get back to full health. But when you lose a franchise quarterback like Alex Smith in the situation that Washington did, there's not much you can do there. It's in their scenario, they picked up a guy who hadn't started a game in 7 years and won a game for them. That should show promise. The fact that Josh Johnson can come in, win his first career start, and in a situation where he hasn't started a football game in 7 years, and can find a way to win a game for you. I know you didn't make the playoffs, but that was a big win at the time. So that should show some promise for the upcoming years. And of course, uh, if Alex Smith can come back, that's fantastic. If not, you may want to start looking to roll with Josh Johnson. He looked somewhat impressive in those games that he played for the Redskins. At number 8 was the Atlanta Falcons again, and the Falcons, their downfall was the beginning. They put things together towards the end. They looked like a motivated football team towards the end of the season, but of course, you can't start off 1-5, and the battle is very uphill if you start off very badly, and that's exactly what Atlanta did. They did not look like anything like a playoff team at the beginning of the year. They finished 7-9. That's an achievement for how they started. And finally, last team looking in at the 7th spot was the Minnesota Vikings, 8-7-1. Where did their season go wrong? Their season really, what Minnesota was one a lot like Tennessee, in that one week they looked like they could win a Super Bowl, and the next week they would go out and lose to a team like the Raiders. And that now I'm not saying that they did or that they would lose to the Raiders, but that's just what the vibe you got from this team. Kirk Cousins was either going to come out and put a top 5 quarterback performance, or he's going to put a bottom 20, or a bottom 20. Game performance. So too much inconsistency. You have the receiving core and Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph. Like, you have some great weapons on the offense. They just weren't getting involved enough towards the end of the season, and finishing 8-7-1. That tie comes back to haunt them, that they tied with Green Bay earlier this year. So now to talk about the scores And again, when it comes down to the NFL in Week 17, the Bengals and the Steelers, they needed to win, and they needed to win, and they needed the Browns to beat the Ravens or the Colts and the Titans to tie to get into the playoffs. They accomplished their first part of the deal earlier in the day. They finished 9-6-1 with a win over Cincinnati in their home stadium, and of course they sweep Cincinnati again this year. Then you had we'll talk about the games that they needed. We'll start off with the least probable game. That was the Sunday night game, and a win and you're in scenario. So Colts win, they're in. Titans win, they're in. They tie, Steelers are in. It was that simple. Colts, though, controlled the game from beginning to end, and Andrew Luck, 24-35, 285 yards, 3 touchdown passes on the Titans defense. Colts win 33-17. They get the 6th seed in the AFC. So, again, only game left, Browns and Ravens. Sunday. It was Sunday at 4. The Ravens took a big lead, or a decent-sized lead, before Cleveland started crawling their way back. And eventually, before you knew it, it was 26-24, and Cleveland was driving down the field trying to get a field goal as time expired. Unfortunately for them, though, on a 4th and 10, Baker Mayfield pressure out of the pocket, and he throws up, and it's picked off by C.J. Mosley. The Ravens clinch the AFC North for the first time, I believe, in 3 years, and they will be the number 4 seed in the playoffs, knocking Pittsburgh out of the playoffs in the process. So, on the NFC side, really the only two games that had weight for actual teams making the playoffs were the Eagles and the Vikings games. Of course, the Vikings games also ties into a different seeding scenario. The Vikings, if they would play the Bears, and if the Bears had won with a Rams loss, they would be the number 2 seed in the in the NFC. With a win, they could not go lower than the 3rd seed in the NFC. So the Bears, they beat the Vikings in Soldier Field, I believe is where it happened. Excuse me, no, actually it was in Minnesota. And Philadelphia, the team now that Minnesota's lost, all you gotta do, win and you're in. And guess what? They did just that. They were able to control the Redskins offense, beating them 24-0, and of course, shutting them out. And Nick Foles, he left the game with a ribs injury, but he will be, as in the latest reports I've seen, he should be good to go to take on the Chicago Bears. So, talking about talk about Wild Card Weekend. Of course, we're going to see a decent slew of games, starting it off on Saturday night. At 4:35, we have the Colts and the Texans. Andrew Luck, again, leading the Colts back to the playoffs. The Texans get a home game. I like the Texans to win this game. I think that the Texans are a pretty good team. I think this is going to be close. I do. I think that the Colts are a very talented team. Their defense is playing so much better than we expected it to at the beginning of the year. And here they are at 6th seed. This is an AFC South matchup, so you got to think a lot of times you can throw the records at the window, and it just comes down to who's got the better talent. But I like the feeling I have. I'm going to take the Texans to beat the Colts at home. The Dallas Cowboys hosting the Seattle Seahawks. Dallas trying to win their first first playoff game in a decent time against a Seahawks team who, again, has exceeded expectations, honestly, this year, in my opinion. And, I'm not a hater of the Cowboys. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm trying to get my point across as here. But I don't think I'm going to take the Seahawks to win this game on the road. Seattle, towards the end of the season, has been pretty impressive. Of course, they did lose to the San Francisco 49ers, I believe, in Week 16, but they came back with an impressive win in Week 17. I like them to beat the Cowboys and control their rushing attack with Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott running out of the scramble, and I like the Seahawks to win this game on the road. On Sunday, we have the Los Angeles Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens playing in M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore at 105. Of course, the Chargers, they lost at home to the Ravens. The Ravens, fun fact, are on fire. I mean, they are as hot of a team as they come right now. Lamar Jackson leading this team right now, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they have won, 6 out of their last 7 games. Phenomenal in Baltimore. here's the thing. I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this game. I truly believe that the Chargers are a top 3 team in the AFC. And I think that the Chargers, they'll think about it. They'll let the Baltimore loss motivate them going on the road, and they'll find a way to knock off the Ravens. I think that's how it's going to happen, and it's not going to be easy. It may come down to a last second field goal, but I like the Chargers to control to control Lamar Jackson, maybe force him to make a few mistakes, and the Chargers escape with a win. And finally, we have the Eagles and the Bears at 440. This is an interesting game to me because it's Nick Foles, an experienced guy who's obviously played on the biggest stage now against the Chicago Bears, and Mitchell Trubisky, this will be his first playoff experience. I'm going to pick the Bears for the home field, but do not be and the line is Chicago favored by 6. I don't like that. I think it could be closer than that. I think the Eagles could very well win this game. But give me the Bears. They are 7-1 at home this year. I like Chicago. I like the system they have and their two-headed monster in the backfield. Of course, Mitch Trubisky has been fantastic in his second year leading the offense. Their defense is probably the best in the league right now. Give me the Chicago to beat Philadelphia in the wild card playoff. So that's it for the NFL. But the NCAA, of course, we've had a lot of great bowl scores so far, obviously. And again, we've had our official college football playoff semifinals already played. They were just played over a couple days ago. So the thing that I want to talk about is we have the 14 playoff right now. Of course, a lot of people, including myself, say that we should go to an 18 playoff. I like the 8-team format a little bit more. Now, the ultimate question, it isn't 14 right now. The 4 teams in the playoffs, Alabama taking on Oklahoma 1v4, and the Clemson Tigers taking on Notre Dame in the 2v3. There were 2 blowouts in the first round. Alabama, Oklahoma, Alabama, in a league of its own. Clemson, Notre Dame. I will say this: I don't think that watching that game and seeing the way Clemson played against the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, in my opinion, should not have been in the college football playoff, at least in the format that we have now. In the 14 playoff, there was no reason that we should have seen Notre Dame in their no conference championship. In this day and age of college football, I truly believe that in order to go and be successful in the upper stage, whether it be in a good bowl game or a situation like the college football playoff, you have to play in a conference, and you should have to win your conference in order to have a shot at it, unless in certain situations. But Notre Dame, in my opinion, they didn't really play anybody that was ridiculously tough all year. Clemson comes in, and is Clemson a fantastic football team? Yes. Is Clemson probably at least the second best team in the nation? Absolutely. But they were outclassed. There was no real fight coming out of them, and so Notre Dame, I don't think they should have been in. I truly believe, and a lot of people are saying Georgia. To me, the next most deserving team was Ohio State. Ohio State had only lost 1 game. They won their conference championship. You could say what you want about how they didn't play anybody in the regular season and the loss to Purdue, but Georgia, they had lost 2 games. They lost their conference championship. Yes, they lost to Alabama, but and it doesn't matter. They blew a lead in the second half. Ohio State was more deserving to get in my opinion, than Georgia was. But, of course, they went with Notre Dame. 2 blowouts in the first round. We will see Alabama and Clemson meet in the college football playoff for the 4th straight year, channeling some inner NBA vibes, of course, with the Warriors and Cavaliers. So, of course, as I said, we will see them in the last bowl game of the year. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about the bowl games we've got coming up. And actually, right now, as we speak, LSU and UCF are playing. UCF trying to continue their undefeated streak, the longest streak in the FBS right now. LSU does lead 31-21 as they just as I said that they kicked a field goal. Therefore, it will be 34-21 right now with 5:18 left in the third. At the end of the third quarter, Kentucky out just running all over Penn State 27-7. Kentucky has been a team that looked like they were going to be a threat in the SEC East. They stumbled a little bit towards the end of the year, but we know what we're getting with Benny Snell Jr. Out of the backfield. And UK, if they put their minds to it, they can be a fantastic football team. Talk about some other games. The Washington Huskies will take on the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. I like Ohio State to win this game. Dwayne Haskins, there still is questions of if he will go to the NFL this year. He has that option. It's pretty well thought that he will be a high draft pick if he does, but Justin Herbert from Oregon just decided to stay in Oregon, even though he was projected to be like a top 2 pick. So anything could happen. At 8:45, we had the Texas Longhorns taking on the Georgia Bulldogs in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Georgia, again, the team that the consensus all around the nation team that people think should have been in the college football playoff. Texas, a team that had the aspirations in the Big 12 and kind of lost some games they shouldn't. They are 9-4. I like Georgia to win this game as well, favored by 12 in the Superdome. Georgia, just a fantastic rushing attack with DeAndre Swift. Jake Fromm out of the passing game, Mecole Hardman. They are a capable football team. They'll beat the Longhorns in the Sugar Bowl. And continuing on, we've had, again, a lot of great college football action so far in the bowl season. We're actually getting towards the end of it, and now that I look at it, I don't know what I'm thinking. The last bowl game that's left is the national championship after today. It will be the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Clemson Tigers, as I mentioned. That's going to be an interesting game to think about, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we will go live. Yes, we actually will go live, or we will put out an episode the day of the national championship. So I'll go more in depth about it next week. So if you don't want to miss that, be sure to tune in again next week. That'll do it for the NCAA NCAA football side of things. But last but not least, we're going to talk about the NBA, the National Basketball Association. Again, as the All-Star game creeps closer and closer, voting has officially opened. So to do that, you just go to the NBA's website. There will be a link to vote for your favorite All-Stars, and do that. You could be out there, try to get your favorite players out into the All-Star game. I've already done it a few times, so let's jump right into our standings review. In the Eastern Conference, we have Milwaukee at 25-10. They have finally overtaken the throne from Toronto in the win percentage. They are 25-10. Toronto is right behind them at 27-11. Number 3 is the Indiana Pacers at 25-12. Again, another team that is streaky. They are extremely streaky. Have won 5 straight. They won 7 straight earlier this year, then lost 2 straight after that. So they are a streaky team. Oladipo, Collison, Bogdanovich. That is a tough backcourt for the Pacers in the Eastern Conference, and they are capable. They're a pretty good team. They got a pretty good starting 5 and good depth. They are 3rd in the East. Number 4 is the Philadelphia 76ers at 23-14. Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. This is a team that you can almost expect will be higher, possibly than the 4 by the end of the year. But the way these other 3 teams are playing, you start to wonder, and that may not be the truth. Number 5 is the Boston Celtics, 21-15. Another team that kind of we thought would be higher in the seedings instead of 5, but it's taken some time to kind of mesh throughout the year. They have lost a game. Their streak stands at 1 loss right now, but 21-15. As long as they can get in the playoffs, that's a dangerous team to look out for. Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, and crew. Number 6 is the Charlotte Hornets at 18-18. In my own opinion, Kemba Walker should definitely be an All-Star. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He showed out at the beginning of the year. He was playing like an MVP candidate. He kind of cooled off towards the end, but 18-18, 500 basketball. That's good enough for 6th in the Eastern Conference right now. Number 7 is the Miami Heat at 17-18. Dwayne Wade's farewell season as a member of the Miami Heat. They are in the playoffs right now, and you better believe that's a chip on their shoulder that they will keep with them throughout the entire season as they try to make a push to get into the playoffs for Wade's last playoff series. And rounding out the top 8 is the Detroit Pistons at 16-18. Blake Griffin, an under-the-radar MVP candidate with Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, just to name a few. Detroit is a team that could either stay right where they are or fall drastically and make their way out of the playoffs. They sit at 1 game ahead of the Brooklyn Nets for that 8th spot and the Orlando Magic. But again, Orlando, they do this every year. They start off pretty well and then they kind of stumble and they crumble throughout the season. So Detroit has the potential. I believe they have more potential to bust than boom, but anything can be said throughout this far of the season. In the Western Conference, at number 1 is still the Denver Nuggets at 23-11. Their win percentage is .676. So Golden State's right behind them. They have more wins, 25-13. But of course, the win percentage is the important thing. So Golden State, 25-13. They are second in the Western Conference. Number 3 is the Oklahoma City Thunder at 23-13. Number 4 is the LA Clippers at 21-15. Number 5 is the Houston Rockets at 21-15. Number 6 is the Los Angeles Lakers at 21-16. Number 7 is the Portland Trail Blazers at 21-16. Number 8 is the San Antonio Spurs at 21-17. Sacramento is in the 9th spot at 19-17. And Memphis sits at the 10th spot at 18-18. So put this into perspective. I always like to do this just as a comparison of the conferences. Right now, out of the Western Conference teams, you could take all of them except for Phoenix, or almost all of them except for Phoenix, New Orleans, and Minnesota, and put them in the Eastern Conference, and they would be in the playoffs right now, which is absolute insanity. So instead of Minnesota, New Orleans, and Phoenix, that's 3 off. Out of the 15 teams, 12 teams have the record to be a playoff team. It's absolute insanity, and I love to look at that because everyone knew that the Eastern Conference had anticipated to be the weaker conference coming into the year, but when you look at the Wild Wild West right now, you start to think, how did this happen? How did the West get so much better than the Eastern Conference? But, that's a debate for another day. Well, that is going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes, the podcast edition. Again, if you like what you heard, then be sure to like our Facebook page where we'll update all that goes on here on Hot Takes with Holmes. We're also on YouTube where all of our broadcasts are uploaded to. Current broadcasts, past broadcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us at Hot Takes with Holmes on both Facebook and YouTube to keep up with the great content that we try to put out for you each and every week. Again, as soon as I find out a time that we would be going live from Radio Free Radford going into the spring semester, I will upload and post that onto the Facebook page. So again, like our Facebook page, be able to find that out whenever I can. Now, for my co-host, Isaiah Adair, again, who could not be here with us today, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll see you next week here on the channel.